in the Vatican City, beneath the hallowed frescoes of the Sistine Chapel. An extraordinary gathering will be on the horizon in the next few days. A confirmed 133 cardinal electors. Some say 133, some say 135, but it's thereabouts. 13 more than the established canonical limit, which will convene for a conclave that could redefine papal elections for a new generation. So for those unfamiliar, the Catholic Church, with over 1.3 billion faithful across the globe, elects its leader, the Pope, the Bishop of Rome, through a deeply sacred and secretive process. That process is governed by a document called Universi Dominici Gregis, which sets strict rules, saying that only 120 cardinals under the age of 80 may vote. So are we witnessing a break from tradition or the evolution of one? I'm joined now via Teams to unpack this story by Archbishop Zoli Lempambani, SCI, who is the first Vice President of the Southern African Catholic Bishops' Conference, also an expert voice on church law and practice. Good afternoon. Thank you for your time this afternoon, Archbishop. So, I mean, this is a tradition that dates back to the 13th century. Just tell us what a conclave is and how it works.
All right, thank you very much. Greetings to you and greetings to your listeners and your viewers too. The conclave, you know, it's a body that gathers to elect the Pope after the one either passes on or has resigned, like the one previous to this one. So the conclave is made up of some cardinals. I know that the document you've just quoted, Universi Dominici, says 120. However, even the number, you know, was changed from time to time. It was started first in 1999, and then in 2013, you know, Pope John Paul II, you know, changed it to 120. But all the same, now I'm not quite sure then what they have agreed upon, because the conclave is the one that agrees with that number. But the conclave is made up of the cardinals who are less than 80 years, from 80 downwards. They are called elective cardinals. They can either be elected into or elected popes, or they are also able to elect the Pope themselves. And so they gather in the Sistine Chapel, where they are actually logged in to vote for the new Pope. And now they are logged in and everybody else is logged out. No media, no nothing. Is very, very secretive, as you have just said. And so this is what is going to be happening from the 7th onwards. Yeah. And that whole exercise actually is exercise guided by the Holy Spirit, because at the beginning of the whole election process, they celebrate Mass, which is the highest prayer in the Catholic Church. And at that Mass, then they all also swear an oath, they take an oath of secrecy, that they are going to stick to the rules. So, and then from Mass, then they are all led into the Sistine Chapel, where each one is given his seat and where he finds all the papers that has to do with the voting. Yeah. Afterwards, after they will have been given all the rules and regulations that govern the voting itself of the new Pope.
And why the magic number of 80? Is it to do with the eligibility of those who are cardinal electors for them to also potentially be elected?
Oh, yes, for sure. I mean, all the cardinals electors, they have a potential, they can be elected as popes. You know, I would say they have a passive and active vote. You know, the passive vote is they can be elected. The active vote, they can elect the Pope. Yeah. So all those from 80 down, that was what was agreed upon some years back. Yeah. That was put down, yes.
Yeah, so 80 there in reference to the age of those who will be participating in the process.
The age, yes.
Tell me about, I've seen a lot of commentary about how the complexion of the complexion in the loose sense of the conclave will be very different this time around, largely due to some of the steps and decisions that Pope Francis took during his papacy in terms of its population and regions of the world from which these cardinals will be coming. How significant is that?
It is very significant, Baba, because Pope Francis made sure that even the smallest countries, need to be represented in Rome, as he wants the church and its voice to reach far and wide, and he wants everybody in the whole world to know what is happening in the Catholic Church. And hence then he had called this synod on synodality, which started in 2021, right at the grassroots level, because normally the synod is all organized in Rome. But this time Pope Francis said, I wanted to start from the grassroots level. And questionnaires were issued. And every bishop in his diocese and every priest in his parish had to reach out to the people. Even those who do not even come to church, even the non-Catholics for that matter, had to be involved. So that was his philosophy, that he wants the voice of the church to reach everyone so that we can all be missionaries. And so that's why then the complexion of the conclave will change. It would involve cardinals from many different countries.
Yeah.
This was his vision.
And there's a requirement of a two-thirds majority, Archbishop. Two-thirds majority in any election is difficult to attain. What's that about? My understanding is that it dates back to a period in the 13th century where there had been a deadlock during the election of the successor to Pope Clement. It took, some years for a new pope to be elected. Is that why we now have this requirement of a two-thirds majority?
It took about 3 years. Well, the two-thirds majority is the high number. We want to make sure that the person who has been voted is the person that the Holy Spirit has pointed at. Because, the whole process takes place under strict, prayerful, and spiritual exercises that are there. They all pray and convoking the Holy Spirit, to guide and lead them. Well, let alone then any human factor that might come in. But that's why then they are locked out of the world. They don't have their cell phones. They don't have any communication with anyone outside the Sistine Chapel or even outside in the world. Even when they get out from there to go into their sleeping places, they are all locked out of the whole world. So they must be in this prayer spirit.
So pretty much quarantined.
Spirit.
So pretty much quarantined.
Yes, they are quarantined, yes.
Lastly, is it possible, Archbishop, to talk about favorites? I've seen a lot of speculation. The Cardinal from Philippines is a name that keeps coming up quite a bit, and quite a number of others. Is it possible to speak of any favorites, or is that left entirely to the guidance of the Holy Spirit?
No, look, before the Cardinals, meet in the Sistine Chapel, they will have had some discussions, some deliberations for these 9 days before then. And they talk about many things, about where the church, is going and how the previous pontiff or the previous pope, lead the church. And then they also share about their successes and joys and challenges of their churches before they go to the Sistine Chapel. Now, there they give some direction of, how do they want, what kind of a person would they want to follow the deceased pope. And then so that he can give the direction of the church, which everybody somehow agrees about. So there can be no favorite in there. Now, if the Cardinals, will say, okay, we know that fellow, is good at this, he might be the one to guide the church. So then they will elect him in spite of any wherever he comes from.
All right. Let's leave it there for this afternoon. It's going to be an interesting and gripping, next few days as the whole world will turn its eyes to the Sistine Chapel just following that process.